everyone. I'm actually going to do a pre-recording of my webinar about how to advertise during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm down here in Panama, just want to make sure I can deliver this presentation to everyone without some serious Wi-Fi issues that I've been having over the last little bit. So I'll jump into it. Okay, so we're going to start off with a little introduction. I'll give you a little introduction on NAV43 as well as myself. We're then going to jump into a little bit of a COVID analysis. So COVID-19, how it's affecting the economy, but specifically details that are surrounding marketing and advertising. Obviously, this is a pandemic. It spans the globe and every industry and market. But let's focus in on how it's changing marketing initiatives. So then I'm going to go into a three-step approach for marketers. So really the first thing is looking at like a little bit of a CLV calculation exercise, but most importantly, analyzing your current products. Then I'm going to go into some tips that I have for offers, and then some just platform-specific tips and tricks, and just some things to think about as you're advertising, whether it's specifically in Google Ads or in some of the other platforms. We can go into that, and then we'll talk about what's next. So who are we and why do you care? Now, Nav43, we're a technical search agency, so we make our living in search, SEO, search engine marketing. We're all pretty much been in the game for the last several years. Myself and Tyler, the founders of the company, for the last 10 years, have made our living on understanding this industry. We've obviously been through quite a few ups and downs in the industry over the last 10 years, but I will say this, it's a new experience with the COVID stuff. So it's good to have a really strong team around us. We're all researching, working on things, figuring it out, right? And what really that leads to is the combination of coming into this of SEO and SEM. I get to see from my perspective how the advertising team is reacting to this, but also how we get to see content shine in this period of time. So in these ebbs and flows of a pandemic, of a recession versus when the economy is booming, you see marketing swings happen where people are investing in different things. So right now we're certainly at a time where the advertising world is a little bit spooked, and some of it's been paused or some of it's been redirected or whatnot. But to SEO in general, I've been seeing a little bit different of a trend. But I get the chance working amongst this team to see it work across both and see how they work together. And now more than ever, it's important to see how they complement each other moving into this. Myself, I run the SEM team alongside my director of SEM, John Verano, and founded this alongside Tyler a few years back. Yes, I'm a mathematician, all that good stuff. I've really been an entrepreneur most of my life. Started off this my first company back in university time, and really decided very early on that that was the way I wanted to go. So 4 years ago, when I started this in my condo boardroom and was kind of figuring things out, you never really knew what you're gonna get. So where I am today is really trying to find a way to make Nav43 a global leader in search. I mean, I've had quite a few experiences, and I've seen. Um, so who am I? So my name is Ben. I'm one of the founders of Nav43, as I've alluded to. I am a search SEM specialist by trade and a mathematician by education. I've been doing this for the last 10 years, as I mentioned before, but I've really been an entrepreneur and a business owner, as far back as I can remember in this my corporate world or my business experience. But yeah, I have a lot of experience in actual platforms themselves, and I kind of took that to start my own company, start my own agency. So I really built that into my team around me as well, alongside Tyler. So right now, our main mission is really to become a global leader in search, and it's times like this where agencies can emerge when they have the right strategies, when they guide their clients the right way, when they have their foot in the industry and are pushing things a specific ways. So I'm as much as like excited is not the right word. I'm certainly not excited about what's happening right now, but the challenge in front of us is interesting, and you know what? We're just gonna do the best we can. So, marketing during COVID-19. Let's take a look at how some of the numbers are, what the numbers are telling us. First of all, I think we can all agree this is something none of us have actually experienced before. Obviously, there's been previous pandemics, and there's been economic recessions like 2008 and the dot-com and etc. There's certainly been ebbs and flows, but a pandemic of this nature that has affected our economy and our business industry this way, as you know, it's pretty crazy. And we really don't know how long it's going to last. So advertisers and marketers have to keep that in mind as we're moving forward. There's a lot of different projections out there, and we have to keep in mind that how long this is going to last in terms of like a health risk is different than how long the economy is going to last. Is different than how long we're going to have these extreme measures of shutdown and social isolation. There's definitely going to be levels of this, but one thing we can expect is that the ripples of this are certainly going to last throughout the year. So we still have some targets, we still have budgets, we still have goals, there's still engagement. Kind of how we're going to move forward in 2020 is really where we're at right now, right? And what we're seeing is a clear overall behavior change. Just in general with the countries that are doing social isolation. Obviously, I'm in Panama now, which is pretty extreme measures being taken here. Similarly, in the US and Canada, there are a lot of social isolation measures, and throughout Europe and Asia, there's different levels of it, and we're not going to get into what's right or wrong on that. But one thing we're seeing is with the increased people at home, you're seeing a lot more screen time. You're seeing a lot of people who are engaging online. There's actually a 60% increase on the content we watch in most cases, which is telling for people working from home, isolated in their home with Wi-Fi and their computers. So we're not only seeing like in-store patterns change with stores being shut down as not essential or potentially just shut down fully, increasing online purchases, but people are also a little afraid to go out in public, so they're purchasing more online. Workforce is going remote. Obviously, some businesses are already equipped for this, but many weren't, and there's a lot of changes in people's working behaviors for this way. Social isolation itself, you're seeing a lot more engagement amongst friends. I know myself, we're doing like Saturday trivias and a lot of different online gaming and writing and engaging with content online is just happening a lot more. And of course, unfortunately, there are a lot of shutdowns and unemployments happening, which is a really a sad thing to see, and we don't wish that on anyone. But it is increasing people's time online, and you know what? There is still room for engagement there. So even before all this happened, year over year, we were seeing pretty significant jumps in engagement. This just shows 2018 versus 2019 on some of the different ways that people are engaging. You can actually see the orange there is internet on a computer, or internet on an app or a smartphone, and you can see the year over year increase in that alone. So people were already engaging online more and more. Needless to say, when this all changed, that increased even more. And one thing this is really interesting to see is, online sales across verticals. They didn't like, this is March 23rd. They're actually going up, if anything. So people are buying more. If they maintain advertising during economic downtimes, they can fare better as long as they do it smart and they do it with empathy and they do it properly. There's a lot to be taken in consideration here. So, especially with the internet traffic increasing. Now this here is a little bit interesting. Just kind of going over some conversion rates and how they're declining. So these stats are from Google Ads. I mean, and they're actually, I think these are U.S. specific, if I'm not mistaken. And it just shows that people don't really know how to behave. Now, just because you're hesitant to convert today, there's a lot of ways to interpret this. And this is certainly different industry by industry. And if I pulled up the graph that showed each industry, some of them are actually going way up. But as a whole, we're seeing a drop in some of the conversion rates across Google Ads. So the question really is, what does that mean? And to me, it shows that consumer behavior has been changing faster than marketers are reacting. So let's take that in for a second. People are still searching, they're engaging more. There's people, they have more time on their hands, but they're not buying. Now, there are definitely cases where it just doesn't make sense to buy. We're going to go into that, breaking down your products by their type. But in most cases, what you're actually seeing is marketing companies, marketing managers, and brands aren't reacting fast enough because everything was week by week right now. And if your messaging isn't matching where you are that week, and unfortunately sometimes we have to operate off the data where it's a little bit behind, you can be a little proactive, but nonetheless, what you're seeing here is a gap between what the user wants and what the brands are offering. So it's something to keep in mind. However, we can succeed with the right strategy. So we just got to get smart with how we're addressing our users, the content we're putting in front of them, and essentially trying to win them over with the right messaging and the right positioning. So I'm going to go into a little bit of a three-step process. I alluded to this in my blog. Essentially, it's nothing groundbreaking. In fact, it's a marketing exercise that realistically agency specialists and marketing managers should be performing anyways. But let's just do it with a little bit of a twist where we look into some of the customer lifetime value or CLV, and kind of evaluate that with how we're positioning our offers and our content, right? So it's never exactly so cut and dry what to do, but we can break it down and start looking at decisions inside of a segmented area and say, is this the right move? What's the next step here, right? So the three steps is really identify. So find out your KPIs, find out your targets. There's often going to be targets you had established before all of this craziness kind of hit us, and everyone had done their 2020 planning in November, and all those people who were way ahead of the game in November, December are going, uh-oh, Q1 is a little bit crazy. So looking at your current targets, evaluating them, and matching them to audiences. So after you kind of figure out your KPIs, your customer lifetime value, or your return on ad spend, whatever numbers that you need to hit before and after this pandemic, however it adjusts for your brand. The second thing is actually analyzing how you're going to change your offering and your products to match that. So, what kind of goods do you have, and how do they fit alongside your target audiences, and what kind of cost per acquisition can you sustain to keep these going? You might take a little bit of a hit now and spend a little more on the return on ad spend, or your cost per lead might go up. But at a long term, if you're still winning and you're still profiting and driving cash flow for your business and keeping it going, you can still come out of this as on the up. And then thirdly, I don't know if that's a word. And third off, execute. So this is where we're going to go into a little bit about actually how to move forward inside the platform. So one, two, three, identify, analyze, execute. So we're going to do some calculations. We're going to look at some of the offers and the different product types. And then we're going to look at some tips for. In this slide here, I want to actually go through an exercise and calculate a couple example products. I'm just going to use made up products instead of any sort of client details or numbers or that kind of stuff, just so everyone gets an understanding. Something easy. We want easy calculations here for the presentation. So product one, I have an average basket here of $100. I'm gonna have one per month, 6 months lifetime, a 30% gross profit margin, and then a 90% retention rate. So even though retention rate kind of is built into that average customer lifetime in months, we can add a little buffer here, 10% people who might drop off during this time, just to be a little on the safer side and to calculate that customer lifetime value to be at $162. So for people who or for users and brands that don't have recurring purchases, and you might be focused on your sale up front, especially in the case where you have upsells and remarketing sales and re-engagement and the ability to sell to them in the future. This is where it's interesting, where you're going to say, okay, you might have to take a hit on your initial break-even point. So what's your break-even point on that first sale? Find out what that is, and really that's your max cost per acquisition. And even if you make no money on that first sale, keeping your cash flow going, keeping your clients engaged, your referrals open, but you can also focus on that future sell. So in addition to actually calculating your customer lifetime value on a product level, and then evaluating your advertising split and where you're going to prioritize your dollars, you can also think of this as a pretty good exercise to start evaluating what you could lose today, or not lose, but give up today to make money in the future. So whereas in the beginning, before this, you might have been very focused on that initial sale, you might take this time to reduce it, or to reduce your price, do an offer, figure out a positioning on how to get the product in someone's hands at a different value, maybe spend a little more on your cost on your advertising, um, in order to make that money back in the future. So something like this, where it's a longer customer lifetime and there's more money to be made in the long term, is also another option, right? So in this case here, it's really a difference of the second product being a longer sale, and you can focus on increasing that lifetime even further to increase that customer lifetime value. But in some cases, it doesn't necessarily have to be this kind of comparison where it's by the month. It could simply be that you're looking at products and how valuable they are to you now and how you have to sell to them in the future. So it could be an upsale or something like that. And you focus your time on that remarketing. So make them get their credit card information, or get them purchasing, or have them engaging and falling in love with your brand, or doing what they got to do to engage with your brand now to be sold to at a profitable margin later in the future. So you're not necessarily pulling back, you're just adjusting your strategy. But by understanding this CLV and this break-even point, we can really map out your cost per acquisition. And then we can do this across all your products and figure out how we should be focusing our efforts. So after we have those numbers all down for the different products that you have, and we can work together on that side, or you can ask me some questions and shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer them on when you're doing your customer lifetime value calculations. But we can start going through the products you have and really identifying them. So you're going to have your target audiences, and you're going to have that you've built out. And what you're going to want to do with your target audiences is you're going to start wanting to think about how they're reacting now in this time. Maybe for example, it might be that your main target is people who work in restaurants and bars. Well, it's a very hard time for anyone who has a local location, and it's what would be considered a non-essential service to be for in-house dining. Obviously, it's an industry that's really hurting right now, and I'm going to go into some examples of how we can help that industry out later. But right in front of us, you're going to want to think about prioritizing how you would target someone who's a bartender or a restaurant owner, if that's your person. So I'm just using that as an example. There's lots of different industries we can think about, but not only creating your target audiences based upon how they interact with your product. Don't think about it as a you. Don't think about your brand. Think about your user. Think about your target audiences and how they're reacting in this time, and how they need your product. So there's a couple different ways that we can break this down. One being like a need now, and by need I don't mean need, I mean like could use now. It just kind of had a nice ring to it. But like a need now, which would be like maybe the entertainment or some sort of engagement, like if you sell apps or games or screen time on or you sell content or whatever your focus is right now, something to keep them engaged. Or potentially it's equipment to work from home. It's headsets or monitors or etc. Things that are useful for people working at home, and they might not have invested in before, but now that they're really stuck here working at home, they're investing in now. So these kind of goods that we know people are engaging with more and we know they need more, we can prioritize that advertising now. Then we have like the need later, of course, which these are things that, they're not necessarily luxury or essential goods. Uh, so they don't have one way or the other, but they're things that people are probably going to still want to buy at one point. A new laptop. My laptop's getting old. I still need to eventually buy a new laptop. Same thing with a bicycle, or same thing with a trip to somewhere. Maybe a vacation's a little more on the luxury side, but a trip to see your family or something like that. These are things that you might not need now, so they're not on your as a user. They may not be on your initial purchase, path, or you're not looking to buy right now. But if you can get them on a good deal or a discount to experience later, that might be a good idea. So like, I might not go spend full price on my brand new bike because I don't have that like joy of being in the store and getting on that bike and being like, wow. But if I'm looking to buy a bike and I see an ad for a bike that is shipping and I could ride in a couple months, and it might cross my mind. So it's not something. It's an area where you have to be careful with your positioning and with your content, but at the same time, it's not like it's something you could actually get in front of someone now at a discount for them to experience later. And then there's the third category, which is the no need or no use for at the moment, or non-essential, we'll say, because this is a very obviously broad topic, but um, luxury goods like jewelry or collectibles or things that like it's hard for you to say when you're looking at your 6 month cash reserve and you're unemployed whether you're gonna be spending on that kind of stuff. It's not really high on your list of things you're gonna spend money on. So, I'm not saying you have to pause everything, but evaluate directing these funds to other products that might be in a different category. And if you are owning a business that is specifically in this area, maybe it is a good idea for you to pause, and maybe it's a good idea for you to shift your spend into infrastructure of your marketing or into content creation. But let the numbers dictate that. But I would definitely, if you're in this area, it's a time to get realistic, right? That's the biggest thing here is be real of what's in front of you. And then finally, mapping these out to the platforms. So, one thing I don't want you to do is you don't want to go in and just update every single campaign and pause everything and then not have things labeled and lose all of the work you were doing pre-pandemic. One way to kind of go around that is maybe by duplicating your campaigns, creating pandemic-specific campaign targeting, so on a reduced level, or duplicating that campaign and adding new target audiences and testing new audiences in those campaigns before you map it back to your original campaigns. But the really point here is just being careful with how you're executing inside the platform. You don't want to be messing up your keyword data, your any of the machine learning that you've been leveraging over the past that's really got your brand to where it is now. This is a time where you want to be a little careful when you're updating inside the platform. But of course, this is probably the most important part, is making sure your content and messaging and landing pages and all that stuff is adding up. The last thing you want to do is be one of those brands that just is clueless on how it's targeting its users. Like, everyone get together and enjoy my product. I mean, I'm making a joke, but I've seen it. So, making sure your content lines up. And I'm not saying we can't really target COVID keywords, first of all, so that's not even a thing we want to look at. But I'm not even saying you need to latch on to what's happening with COVID-19, but specifically making sure that you're not going ignorantly into targeting your users and saying something that's not very sensitive, right? So, just something to be careful of with your content, your message. And then take a look at the specifics. Maybe you can remove audiences, like I mentioned, the bartenders and restaurant owners. Maybe you can take a look at, bringing down bids on certain audiences that you might not have, but um, adding negative keywords and adding negative audiences, like these specifics inside the campaigns, especially when you're duplicating all these new campaigns. Be careful and make sure you're doing it meticulously. Okay, so I want to go over some offer tips, and offer is a broad word. Some of them aren't even necessarily offers, but just positioning. But ways that brands are reacting right now. I want to go into some examples for you. So, but first, I want to start off with a little quote. This is from my business partner Peter, who's a branding expert and one of the partners who founded NAV43 with me. And that is that we are going to see record consumption of online content and time spent online. Now is the time to create engaging content and convert customers not just for a sale today, but for a potential sale in the future. And he's alluding to some of the ad techniques I talked about earlier, where you're focused on that follow-up sale. You're focused on that remarketing. You're focused on building really strong, engaging content and brand equity and getting in front of your customers with the right message today, so that you can still come out of this when things have either passed or when they've at least altered their state and society is returning to its regular economic passage. We can actually come out of this a little bit stronger. So, you know, you got to think about this from your specific industry. Dining and hospitality is getting hit really hard. So is travel. We both know that. E-commerce is actually booming right now. You still have to move forward with empathy, but it's an industry where you can focus on. I mean, you can definitely double down. Network and IT. I mean, when you're looking at B2B or B2B, like in for tech companies and whatnot, there is still a lot of opportunity here within every single one of these industries. Now, some industries are obviously getting hit worse than others, so you just got to be careful here. But I'm going to go into some examples across each of these and kind of talk about some of the different ways that people are reacting. So one offer is I've been seeing that there's deferral payment plans. So in two different ways. One, maybe interest free, and this is an easy example with a bank, right? Like the interest rates are plummeting, so that's really great that you can borrow money easily. But not even just interest rates and that kind of stuff. It's about reducing the upfront investment to get someone to start using your product and enjoying your service. So forget about borrowing and even just talk about waiving bank fees for the next 3 months. People are looking at financial institutions in that way. So if you're able to either defer or move payments and get people to use your product now and make a decision on using your product without having to worry about the financial concerns, this is something that's, it's not a new tactic. It's none of these are really new tactics. They're just kind of having applications that are very relevant right now, and how brands are reacting quickly to this are really cool. So maybe you give that like 90 days where you're deferring that payment, or your loan program is a little bit different. But yeah, one way is deferring. Buy now and save later. I saw this really pretty cool one. This was virtual happy hour, and um, it was just a way of a bunch of like incentivizing social sharing with gift cards and getting people together during this time, and integrating that with their the sharing a drink with someone, a virtual happy hour, and bringing that community together. But they're also finding ways and creative ways to sell their goods still, and that's through the sales of gift cards. So buy now to use later, or buy now to save later. I actually saw a couple different restaurants coming together to create a fund where you could spend $100, where if you used it now, you got 100 for 100, so it's just like a regular gift card. However, if you use that $100 2 months from now or 3 months from now, it actually equated to about $120. So you got a 20% basically savings for waiting to use your purchase. So you're helping out that brand. So this kind of fits along with that buy now and save later mentality. Trials and bundled subscriptions. This is one to look at. So maybe you didn't have a trial period before. Maybe previously before this, you were actually just like sign up and go. But now you're going, you know what? Let's let them try our product for 30 days in a time when they're evaluating their cash flows very differently as users. Or you might add a trial to add this out, or bundle something. Bundle some, 2 months together at a flat rate. So people still have savings, or they're trying a product without having to worry about the exact cash flow, so that when they come out of this and things are a little more clear in 2-3 months, they have a better understanding of where they stand financially. So this was pretty cool, like customized packaging, or customized packages by brands. This one by Spotify was pretty neat. Premium duo, music for two. So what they're doing essentially is you're all under the same roof, and they're targeting people across the same families and the same households, and having discounts at 2, 3 users, and finding ways to save for families who are all at home. So maybe there's a cool way that you can customize a package for your users. This one here actually crosses over into the SEO world. So, it not only is, here's a good example for this, this VoIP client who are writing about headsets, so 7 best headsets, but they're also referring different headsets, and they're selling them. So, not only did they create some content which they can rank in SEO and like leverage on their blog or in their regular content scheduling, but they're also pushing a very relevant product. So obviously that right now people who are working at home, I hope my headset's not too shabby, but it gives them the ability to invest now in something they're using right in front of them, right? And potentially some other ways you can do it is by turning social distancing into a positive. You can reinforce public health guidelines and create content that's around your industry and highlight the personal benefits of staying at home. So you can find ways to create positive content in this time that's relevant, and something you can feed off of in the future. So, when push comes to shove, these last ones like relevant content, relationship building, these aren't necessarily changing your offers. They're focusing on building long-term relationships with your clients. And it could be a relationship in terms of B2B, where you're just getting in front of them now, offering something for them, and free consults, or just kind of working alongside them, providing a ebook or webinars, case studies, and you're providing something to them for the future, where you've established that equity where they come back to you. Or if you're a consumer brand, something kind of fun and creative that just kind of keeps your brand top of mind. So these relationship building and content creation, they really do span across all industries, and it's something that right now a lot of marketers are doing. We're investing in their content, they're investing in their marketing infrastructure, they're creating their dashboards, they're evaluating their content positioning and their user flows, and they're taking this time when things are a little bit in the a little murky on how it's going forward, to evaluate their marketing mix. And then finally, like, there's always the opportunity to work on your brand. So, if you have ways that you can give back, or if you're lucky enough to be in an industry or a company that has that ability, go for it. But it doesn't always have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be a donation. I know myself, I've opened up some of my team's time to work on some local charity initiatives during work hours. Like it can be something like that where you're giving back in any way you're doing. But the thing that people often don't like to do is talk about it. A lot of brands get nervous talking about things, or they get you know, too trigger happy with talking about it. Like mentioning what you're doing and how you're doing it to help out is it's not a crime, and it's something that you should really focus on leveraging. Now, doing that with care and and for the right positioning is important too. So, just something to think about. If there's ways that you can focus your time and energy, or you're lucky enough to give money and do that in a time like this, then there's definitely a lot of opportunities for that. And let's not overlook the fact that it's really nice to help people out when they need it, right? So lastly, I'm going to go over some platform tips. My when I pass this on to Gian Verano and Tyler McCall, and I'll be able to go into their SEO and SEM webinars next, they're going to get further in detail. I'm just going to look at some of the higher level stuff here, but obviously, if you want to reach out to me and talk about it, I have a lot of information of what you could actually do inside the platforms as well. So the first thing I really wanted to kind of go over here was really making that journey frictionless, especially if you're investing all this time in like these new content, relationship building, etc. You want to make sure the user has the best path to purchase, or the best path to your message, that they're seeing the right messaging at the right time, and we're able to convert them no matter where they're engaging with your brand and whatever that conversion really is. And that really starts with your ad journey. So when you're focusing on building your ads, making sure they line up with your landing pages, making sure they line up with your offer. Now, this is nothing new to anyone who's a marketer. It doesn't always have to be a landing page. It could be where they land on your website. But the point here is that it's a synced message, and if you're pushing something related to recent times with this whole COVID pandemic, being empathetic and understanding how that messaging affects your user, just making sure that journey continues until their conversion, right? Like we want to be consistent with our messaging here. And then finally, like adjusting the full picture. So, you might forget to add a negative keyword, and something comes up that you're not looking for, or you're targeting the wrong audience with a messaging that's just not very, I know it's not very tactful, but nonetheless, across the whole picture, past the content, inside the platform, making sure that everything aligns and you're able to be successful. Of course, this one's pretty important. Multi-touch attribution. I mean, not even just multi-touch attribution, just tracking, consistency in general. You're going to need to be able to evaluate the success of these ads, which of course is something we're all doing right now. But especially when you're pushing off for future value, when you're investing in content now and then doing remarketing to re-engage, or relationship building amongst Salesforce to Google Ads, or crossing over the marketing to the sales team like that, and maybe you have a long sales cycle, or there's different ways of valuing how this has really panned out for your advertising investment, but ensuring you have that tracked across your channels and across this buyer path is super important. I cannot stress this enough. Making sure that you're properly tracking your purchase path is just essential, especially when we're doing these kind of future value pushes. I'm just skip by this one. So for Google Ads here, I'm gonna go into this first. This is a really funny one where they have all their hands and you get buy my stuff, but make sure you're changing it across all four of your ad types: display ads, video ads, search ads, in-app ads, whatever it is. Make sure you're doing it across all of them. Consider your context and your tone, of course. Considering to make sure your message is helpful, especially if your industry that's very relevant to this topic. This is really just to make sure to go. This is mostly a Google Ads note here. But one thing that's really important actually is that in the platform yourself, you're just making sure your landing pages and your content lines up. And you know what? Be flexible to pivot. Something that might have worked before might not work now, and don't be afraid to pause it. Now, you can shift that spend. You can duplicate that campaign, reduce your targeting. You can split off keywords that you want to test and try them in a different campaign. You can do a lot of things to not just like stop it and to reevaluate certain aspects of the campaign. What's not working? Go into analysis there, but nonetheless, make sure you're looking at your campaigns pretty often right now because things are changing not just weekly but daily. Like a new regulation comes out that prevents someone from going here doing this, and that could that could be the difference in your campaign converting or not. So you just got to be on it every day right now. And on social ads, the same thing for audiences. Do the same duplications as you would for keyword targeting. Do it for audience targeting. This is an interesting one. So when you do your evaluation, and this doesn't have to just be for Microsoft Ad. It could be for any different new platforms. What happens is you might actually reduce your targeting and reduce what the products you're pushing, or you reduce your broadness of your keywords, or whatever comes from your evaluation of your cost per acquisition and your ROAS and all that good stuff. It might be that your impression share or your impression market share actually reduces. So, that lovely term, low hanging fruit. I'm sure we've all heard it before in the marketing world. This might be a time where you diversify your platforms or where you look to find other ways to spend on the audiences you still know are working. So don't be too tied up in one specific platform. Microsoft Ads offers a lot of opportunity for these lower CPCs and different people searching. It also has a better like a wide business target, so people who are using Internet Explorer from their business laptops. So it could be Microsoft Ads, it could be a content platform, it could be a programmatic advertising platform, it could be an exchange of some sort with specific targeting. Who knows? But um, first and foremost, let's look at the platforms in front of you and see where you might be able to spread out your impression share and your market share, capture more people, the users who are buying now. So that's it right there. That's me going through kind of some high level tips. Of course, I can provide a lot more guidance when it comes to working on your brands right in front of you. So if you have any specific problems, I'm happy to jump into it right now. You know what? We're all in this together, and if there's ways that I can help out, I'm happy to help out. And in the future, if we can work together, that's awesome too. But yeah, I just wanted to take this time to say thank you for listening to the webinar, and please feel free to email me some questions, and we can kind of go over some specifics. We do have some stuff in the pipeline I want to go over. So, like I alluded to, my SEM director, John Verano, he's incredibly smart, and I can't wait to see what he has coming in this next webinar. He'll be diving into some more in-depth strategies that he's been not only applying for our clients, but applying, visualizing in the future for how we can bring on new business too. But the stuff he's been working on is great, and that's going to be focused on the SEM and search engine marketing and display advertising, all that fun stuff. And the next thing will be Tyler. So, I mean, Tyler is one of the, if not the best SEO I know in the world. He's got a lot of knowledge, and we're working a lot of really great brands in this space. So he's going to show you some ways that you can double down on your SEO investment now. There's a huge opportunity right now to invest in your marketing infrastructure, invest in your content. Take this time where you're pulling, maybe you might be pulling ad spend and direct that funds into something that's going to give you a better return on investment in the long term. And SEO is proven to be one of the top channels for that. So you're going to want to tune in and watch Tyler's webinar on the 30th of April. So please, I'll be launching some new creative and content regarding these webinars shortly, but please email me, let me know, and I can send you those details as soon as we get them. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, and yeah, happy marketing. Cheers.